Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Friday. I'm Joe Fryer.
Yeah, I'm Savannah. You made it almost to the weekend. We're going to get started this morning with that star-studded mega fundraiser held across the street from here, right at Radio City Music Hall, that was aimed at giving President Biden's re-election campaign a boost.
The president's campaign says it raked in a record $26 million, with the cheapest tickets going for $250. Now, reporters were not allowed to record video inside of what was a rare occasion. It brought together three presidents in one room, with Barack Obama and Bill Clinton joining President Biden on stage for the evening. The event drew more than 5,000 supporters, and it featured an A-list guest list, including celebrities like Queen Latifah, Lizzo, and Ben Platt. Actor and comedian Mindy Kaling hosted the program, and late-night host Stephen Colbert was moderator for a discussion with the president. So at times, reality was at odds with the glitzy affair. Protesters angry about the president's handling of the Israel-Hamas war interrupted the event several times throughout the night. NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa joins us now with more on this event. So, Ali, this was not your run-of-the-mill fundraiser. What else can you tell us about it, and what was behind the Biden's campaign decision to hold something really so elaborate?
Yeah, guys, good morning. As you mentioned, this was a massive star-studded event, raising over $25 million for the Biden campaign in just a few hours. And the reasoning behind the Biden campaign's decision to do this had a couple different parts. As we know, the Biden campaign already enjoys a massive fundraising advantage over former President Trump and his organization. But raising this amount of money in such a short period of time really sets the campaign up for the long term, setting up infrastructure in key battleground states, raising that ground game, raising that airtime investments to be able to invest in those key battleground states that the 2024 election may come down to. Having this event with former Presidents Obama and Clinton also allows the Biden campaign to reach out to different age groups within the Democratic Party, also different Democrats along the political spectrum within the party. And also you think of some of the political vulnerabilities of the president, some of the concerns that voters have about his age and his mental fitness. Having former President Obama there appeals to young voters who may have those concerns. You think about voters' concerns about the economy and inflation. We know the president has been frustrated by his economic message not resonating as quickly as he wants with voters, and having former President Clinton there address that. At one point, former President Clinton during this event saying that Biden's economic numbers have significantly outpaced the Trump administration's. And he said at one point, quote, "I believe in keeping score. He has been good for America and deserves another term," guys.
Ali, as Joe mentioned, pro-Palestinian protesters had a strong presence at the fundraiser and certainly outside the fundraiser. Stephen Colbert actually asked the president about the Israel-Hamas war. Tell us what he had to say about it.
Yeah, this was something that the Biden team was prepared for. I mean, you think of the president's motorcade passing these dozens of protesters who were outside of Radio City Music Hall, but inside of Radio City Music Hall, there were several times, I believe around 4 times, that this event was interrupted by protesters protesting the president's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. And at one point, Colbert asked the president what the U.S.'s role should be in maintaining peace and investing in a peaceful future for Israel and Gaza. The president again repeated his standpoint where he says Israel has a right to defend himself, but he also talked about the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That did not stop protesters from interrupting that event. And at one point, you saw both former presidents Clinton and Obama come to the president's defense. And at one point, former President Obama said, quote, talking about the presidential perspective of where President Biden is, he says it's, quote, "a lonely seat. One of the realities of the presidency is that the world has a lot of joy and beauty, but it also has a lot of tragedy and cruelty." And at one point, when those protesters still didn't stop, the former president took a much more stern approach to his comments to that protester, saying, quote, "You can't just talk and not listen. That's what the other side does," guys.
All right, Ali Rafa, thank you so much.
Well, this morning, the wife of one of the construction workers who survived the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse says it is a miracle he is alive because he doesn't know how to swim. Julio Cervantes was one of the 8 construction workers on the bridge when a container ship crashed into a support pillar, causing the whole bridge to collapse into the Patapsco River. This dash cam video we're going to show you shows them on the bridge a few hours before the disaster. Cervantes' wife tells NBC News the workers were on a break in their cars when the bridge collapsed. For more, we're joined by NBC News reporter Julia Jester in Baltimore this morning. Julia, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So where do things stand right now in the search for those remaining victims?
Good morning, Savannah. We have not heard word of the location of the 4 remaining victims that are believed to be in the water, but recovering them remains a top priority for Governor Wes Moore. Take a listen to how he outlined the priorities moving forward.
I've issued 4 directives to this team. The first, we need to continue to focus on recovery because it is our obligation to bring a sense of closure to these families. The second, we need to clear the channel and open vessel traffic to the port because the health of the Maryland economy and the national economy depends on it. Third, we need to take care of all the people who have been affected by this crisis. And fourth, we need to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge.
Now, all of these priorities are interconnected. So the victims' families are being taken care of by the government, being provided those resources. But until their loved ones are found, they are going to be in agony. And there's not a timeline for when we might find the remaining victims, but authorities say that clearing the channel might help them do so. Savannah, Joe.
Julia, when we talk about this cleanup, it is going to be a Herculean task. Officials are getting a boost with some federal assistance and one very big crane. Just help us understand how involved this cleanup operation is going to be.
Yeah, Joe, the governor said that this task will be daunting and complicated, and officials used a number of analogies to really drive home just how difficult this is. In terms of the size and scale of this, the governor noted that the Dolly vessel is roughly the size of the Eiffel Tower, and it has the entire Key Bridge on top of it. And in addition to that, he noted that the ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal took 5 weeks to remove then, and that was, you know, not involving a structure on top of it. And so authorities are really just stressing that even though we are seeing the cavalry come in, we have resources now coming in. The largest crane on the Eastern Seaboard is expected to start work. But before it can do so, the Coast Guard notes that the assessment has to be complete before they can really figure out what is the best way to split up the bridge for removal. So there are still some steps to go before the crane can even get to work. But it will be quite a daunting task, but they are moving full steam ahead. Savannah, Joe.
And Julia, just quickly before we let you go, we just heard the governor say he wants to rebuild the Key Bridge. Obviously, there's a lot of work before that can start, but any idea when that could happen?
Well, conversations are already happening with federal officials about the bridge's design. And of course, they just announced a $60 million in federal funding, which authorities say is a, quote, down payment for hopefully more funds to come. As you know, President Biden vowed to cover the cost of rebuilding the bridge, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of coordination. One of Maryland's congressmen said that he hopes to speak with Speaker Johnson today at some point to really drive home the bipartisan importance of securing funds to rebuild this bridge, because as officials have stressed, it's not just about Maryland, it's about the entire nation's economy to get this thoroughfare up and running and get this port back up and running. Savannah, Joe.
All right, Julia Jester, thank you so much.
An Illinois man suspected of stabbing 4 people to death and injuring several others now faces several charges, including murder. Prosecutors say the suspect admitted to the crimes while telling authorities that he had taken drugs before the stabbing spree. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has the details.
As Rockford struggles to understand the carnage, the accused hacker in Wednesday's deadly stabbing spree, 22-year-old Christian Soto, in court facing 13 charges, from first-degree murder to home invasion, for police say a rampage spanning 5 crime scenes across this northern Illinois community. They say Soto attacked 11 people total, killing 4, including a mother and son, a mailman on his route, and a 15-year-old girl, Jenna Newcomb.
Jenna died saving her sister and her friend.
Prosecutors saying the spree started when Soto visited a friend in the first house who he said gave him laced marijuana.
Soto said he became paranoid after the drug usage. He said he retrieved a knife from the kitchen and proceeded to stab Jacob and Ramona to death.
From there, they say he targeted at random, driving his truck onto lawns, breaking into one home where 3 teenage girls were watching a movie, grabbing a bat.
He started swinging the bat, striking all the female victims.
Darlene Weber says Soto came in their back door, attacking her and her children.
He looked at me, he just had the world's biggest smile on his face.
He was smiling.
He looked like the devil incarnate.
They say the family dog, Brandy, bit Soto on the leg as Weber's son fought him off.
And I grabbed a syrup bottle and started beating him with it.
I'm not even kidding. If it wasn't for him, I don't think that I'd be standing and talking to you right now. I really don't. It was frightening.
The woman who identified herself as Soto's mother telling NBC News he's a loving person and he has never hurt anybody before. We never felt threatened by him. We can't believe that is my son. And we're standing outside the hospital here in Rockford where the survivors of this attack, this rampage, have been treated. We're told as of Thursday night, 2 people remain hospitalized here. Both were told in fair condition. Back to you.
All right, Maggie Vespa, thank you so much.
Well, at least 38 people are dead after Israeli airstrikes appeared to hit Hezbollah targets near the Syrian city of Aleppo overnight. The strikes come as Israel says it is preparing for a ground invasion of the city of Rafah. NBC News International correspondent Raf Sanchez is in Tel Aviv and joins us with the latest this morning. Raf, thanks for joining us. Let's get started with this overnight strike by Israel within Syria. What can you tell us?
Savannah, Joe, Israel has been bombing in Syria for years now. The goal of that bombing campaign is to disrupt the flow of Iranian weapons to different Shia militia groups across the Middle East, including Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. But this is one of the biggest strikes we've seen in years. It took place up in the north of Syria near Aleppo International Airport. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, it was targeting an ammunition and a weapons depot near that airport, causing major explosions. 36 soldiers from the Syrian regime killed, according to this monitor, as well as 6 fighters from Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah has confirmed some of its men were killed overnight. They are not giving an exact number at this point, but it comes at a time of heightened tensions between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. There has been a lot of fighting across the border in the last week, as there has been in the nearly 6 months since the October 7th attack. In terms of that strike in Syria, as is their policy, the Israeli military is neither confirming nor denying their responsibility.
Raf, looking at Gaza, Israeli forces have released new videos showing a fresh round of bombings in the area of the Al-Shifa hospital. What is Israel targeting in these attacks?
Yeah, Joe, there is fighting raging not just near Al-Shifa, which is the largest hospital in the Gaza Strip up in the north, but also 2 smaller hospitals down in Han Yunis. And the Israelis say this shows the deep cynicism of Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups, that they continue to flock to these hospitals, knowing that Israel is unlikely to bomb there directly, knowing that there is aid there and there is civilians to hide there. But another way to look at this is that Israel already swept through these hospitals, causing massive disruption, basically taking these hospitals out of commission as medical facilities. And yet here we are, once again, Israeli troops inside these hospitals, which some people are saying is a sign Israel's military strategy in Gaza is really not working, that they at this point are basically playing whack-a-mole with Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other militant groups. The World Health Organization, other humanitarian groups are pleading for a ceasefire, saying that the healthcare system already collapsed and this can't go on. Guys.
Also, the White House and Israel are working to reschedule a meeting that is over protecting humanitarian aid during an expected ground invasion of Rafah, where many people have been sheltering. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said he is planning to go forward with this invasion. Do we know if that meeting has been scheduled and what they hope to accomplish from a humanitarian perspective as something like that unfolds?
So the new timing for that meeting hasn't been publicly announced. We think it's probably going to be next week at the White House. It's likely to be the same Israeli officials who were supposed to go the first time before Prime Minister Netanyahu very publicly called off this trip following that UN Security Council vote where the U.S. did not use its veto power to stop a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. But these are going to be tough conversations, guys, because the U.S. and Israel fundamentally disagree on the path forward in Rafah. Israel says going into that city is the only way to defeat Hamas. The U.S. has been saying pretty consistently now that going into a city where more than 1 million Palestinian civilians are sheltering would be a disaster. Guys.
All right, Rob Sanchez, thank you so much.
25 years, that's the prison sentence handed out yesterday in a federal court here in New York City for former crypto king Sam Bankman-Fried. He was sentenced for his role in the multi-billion-dollar cryptocurrency fraud that led to the collapse of the FTX exchange. CNBC technology reporter Kate Rooney has more on his sentencing.
Convicted of 7 criminal counts of fraud and conspiracy last November, Sam Bankman-Fried learned his fate, sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Just a couple of years ago, Bankman-Fried was a young billionaire living in the Bahamas, running crypto exchange FTX, exerting influence in Washington, and courting celebrity endorsements. Then it all came crashing down.
It does appear that they are filing Chapter 11.
FTX and its sister hedge fund collapsed. Customers left unable to access their funds. Bankman-Fried long maintained he had not done anything wrong.
I didn't ever try to commit fraud on anyone.
In court, Bankman-Fried was contrite, telling the judge he made selfish decisions, adding, "It haunts me every day. I was the CEO of FTX." He said, "I was responsible." The judge admonishing Bankman-Fried, saying there is a risk that this man will be in position to do something very bad in the future. And adding, in his 30 years, he's never seen a performance like Bankman-Fried's trial testimony, saying when he wasn't outright lying, he was evasive.
How are you feeling today?
Bankman-Fried's parents solemn outside the courthouse, saying in a statement they are heartbroken and will continue to fight for our son. Bankman-Fried's lawyers say they plan to appeal.
It was really difficult. I mean, I couldn't eat, sleep.
Sunil Kavori lost $2 million when FTX imploded. He says he's still waiting to get that money back.
I think that it goes some way, some closure, but I don't think it fully reflects the financial and the emotional toll on customers.
Sam Bankman-Fried's fraud was seen as irreparable damage for the industry, but a year and a half after this FTX drama unfolded, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are now back at all-time highs.
All right, our thanks to Kate Rooney for that report.
Well, the West is bracing for more storms, and rain also moves away from the Northeast just in time for the weekend.
NBC meteorologist Violetta Yaz is here with the Morning News Now weather. Violetta, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Great to be here, guys. So we had that soaker in New York yesterday. That rain pushing to the north and east, now affecting New England, still getting a good amount of rain there from Nantucket, Cape Cod, all the way up into Maine. So we do still have some flood watches in effect. Boston no longer included, but you can see that rain expected to continue there across much of Maine right through the course of today. So heavy rain and strong winds here across parts of the East Coast. Wet snow is going to develop on the backside of this across parts of Maine. But if we shift to the west, that's where the action is really going to start to get going as we head into this weekend. We have a strong storm system moving into California. That's going to bring with it heavy coastal rain and also the potential for heavy mountain snow. As we shift into tomorrow, some of those rain bands that may make it into parts of the desert southwest here, but we do have that flood risk from Los Angeles all the way up into, or all the way down into San Diego. By Sunday, that mountain snow starts to shift into the Rockies with areas of heavy rain, again, starting to move into parts of the Four Corners here. So our current flood watch is here from San Luis Obispo all the way down to San Diego. That does, of course, include the Los Angeles area. So heavy rain in the forecast there, but also dealing with winter alerts here for that higher elevation snow. So I know we're, of course, into spring now, but still getting some good snow out across some of those higher elevations and for the ski resorts. But this, of course, is going to lead to at least some flooding here across parts of California and eventually into parts of Arizona and Nevada as well. Some of those heavier amounts here right around the Bay Area, even down into Los Angeles, Santa Barbara getting hit again. So flooding expected to continue through the course of the weekend, at least into Sunday. And of course, that heavy snow across those higher elevations. And that will eventually be shifting into the Rockies. So again, good news for some of our ski resorts. Quickly, I want to touch on the fire weather threat for today. That's going to be elevated here across parts of West Texas, all the way up into parts of Wyoming and Colorado for low humidity and wind gusts. So quiet weather in the east, a little bit of a split weekend as we quiet things down in the east. But of course, going to be very active out west. So we'll need to watch out for some travel delays and things like that as we head into the holiday weekend. Guys, back to you.
All right.
So much going on.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.